the John Dunn Bridge at the Rio Grande Gorge to talk about Perdido. This here is the author, Rick Collignon. Kind of in silhouette because I don't know how to control the fucking camera. You know, but yeah, we'll work on that in post. So, there, that gets a little better right here. So anyway, so while we're going out here, do you remember any of the reasons why you started Perdido, why you wrote that?
You know, it's been a while now, Jeff.
Probably roll that all the way up if you can, that'd be good.
You know, I guess the inspiration for the book was I was with a friend of mine and we were driving across the valley up north of where we are now. We stopped at, there was a place where the river cuts across it and there's a bridge there, and the guy I was with, who had been born and raised here, told me the story that a long time ago somebody had found a woman hanging from the bridge, and you know, it was kind of in a stark place with nothing anywhere around, and the image just kind of caught me, and that was kind of the beginning of the book, which was, who was this woman, where did she come from, and how in hell did she end up in this place? And you know, as the book progressed, I realized it was a lot more about my main character's what's the word? It was more about my main character's attempt to find a place in the village she was in, rather than solving the mystery. And the mystery itself took kind of a backseat to this guy's plight, which covered race and culture and just about everything else. So that's what kicked it in gear. You know,
so it did all function on the hung girl, or is it hang girl?
You know, I'm not sure. I have to look at the book and see what I said, what I wrote down, what my editor said. Yeah, it started right there. And at the time, I thought, man, this is cool. Because he kind of thought he remembered who had found her, and I thought, you know, I could just kind of...
Who remembered?
It was a friend of mine, Modesto Cisneros. We worked together. He lives up in Cuesta, which is about 20 miles north of right here.
So this is kind of a fictional autobiographical piece, which I've always felt it was, but
yeah,
you're kind of confirming that.
Well, it started, you know, I mean, I hate to say the main character's me, but it was kind of my first real book, and I think I bled into it quite a bit.
Oh my God, I have a hard time thinking about directing the movie, thinking about casting anybody that isn't a fucking dead-on impersonator.
Well, I got old since then.
No, I know.
I'm too old for the part.
You and I live in probably the same delusional world where we still think we're in our 30s.
Well, yeah, I may think that, but I never had the delusion I could act.
So
that's kind of what started the book. At the time, I thought, shit, I can just walk through this. I'll just be this character, and I'll go step by step. And you know, I remember Modesto a few weeks later going, you know, I think the guy who found that dead lady is in the lumberyard. And you know, I said, well, go ask him about her. And when he came out, he said he didn't even remember. So as far as walking through the trail of this mystery, it just kind of stopped there, and I was on my own.
So then you just started.
Yeah, I just
creating,
went on.
But then so the whole piece is about your character Will finding his place in this small community that's all basically Hispanic, right?
Well, yeah, he's an Anglo who'd been there. It's probably been, I think it was 18 years he's been there, and you know, all he wanted in life was to find his place, and you know, and how to fit in and how to get to know everybody, and he's kind of mastered the wallflower thing, sinking in the background and not causing a ruckus about anything. And you know, and as soon as he starts bringing up, like, who is this woman, the community reacts against him, and suddenly he's the outsider. He's the guy who came from somewhere else and moved into their midst and thinks he's one of them, and that's actually not what's true. You know, there was a part of me that realized somewhere along the way that, you know, what Will gets, he actually deserves. You know, he pushed too hard.
Right.
You know, so, you know, it's about finding your place and where is that. You know, and it's even the dead girl on the bridge. For me, she's so out of place there. It's,
Right.
you know, that's what caught me. It's like, wow, how did this happen?
So, I was working on the prologue last night, trying to figure out how the fuck to put this into the movie.
Which part?
Well, the whole damn thing. I think it's a great kind of poetic piece, poetic prose, I guess I would call it.
Yeah.
That just, you know, the way you write is the way I cut and think in my mind creatively a lot. Similarly, I jump all the fuck around.
Yeah.
I free associate, go from here to here, kind of. And I know you may be thinking, well, no, I really control that in my writing. I just, as a creator.
Yeah, my writing's pretty much out of control. It's, you know, there's no clear delineation as to where I'm going. And, I mean, part of me considers that a problem. I wish I knew where I was going, because I'm always often writing lost. And,
well, but then my theory is then as soon as somebody pre-maps what they're doing, it kills it. The spontaneity immediately dissipates away. To me, I don't know. To me, it's really important that there's a discovery process every step of the way in creating a story, a script, directing it, casting it, being open to continually discovering something deeper, more complicated.
Well, I buy the theory. I just hate to write that way. You know, I'd love to go like A to B to C to D. I mean, it just sounds easy. You know, but it's not me. I'm screwed.
Well, speaking of which, you know, part of me. So let me go back to the prologue. So I'm looking at the prologue and I'm thinking, you know, I had the script reviewed by a good friend of mine, David Riker, 6 or 7 years ago, who's a great filmmaker and a McCarthy genius guy, and he read it and really liked it, but he said he wanted to know what the motivation of Will was. You know, why is this guy doing all this? And of course, what I realized, you know, I wrote several backstories or some backstory for the character, you know, about some dysfunction in his previous life that led him to wander into Guadalupe and kind of the lost family. But then I realized that's what's represented in Madewell Brown in the prologue. To me, the prologue is this whole microcosm of what the story's about with Will, you know? Yeah.
Well, you know, that's a good question. Excuse me. Well, let me think. It's been a while. I mean, I think, you know, it happens little by little with Will. You know, he's got a girlfriend.
The town slut, right? She fucked everybody, which I love the dialogue in the kitchen.
You know, but they've been together a long time, and you know, he works with everybody in the community. He's, you know, friends with the people at the lumberyard, and the guys he works with were born and raised there. And I think it's Lisa who first tells him, "You wouldn't care about this girl if she wasn't white." And that kind of hits him because he actually doesn't want to believe that. I think some of the draw was, she is white, and this is a Hispanic community, the whole northern part of the state, and it even makes it more bizarre for a white woman to be out there. He's like, he can't even put the numbers together in his head. It's beyond him to figure out how. And I think as it goes little by little, and certain people start pushing back at him, you know, it's not so much a backstory as he's just offended. You know, he's been there 18 years. He feels like part of the community, and suddenly with something he feels he's actually doing no harm is being pushed back at him. He gets pissed.
Well, he's like
he pushes back, you know, which is where, after living here so long, I probably wouldn't have done. You know, but you know, I mean, I guess, you know, in a way, he sees himself as the girl on the bridge. You know, like how easy is it to disappear.
Well, there's this other aspect of Will, which is like he's like the storyteller, oral historian of the community, kind of, or that seems to be his self-appointed thing, whether he's conscious of it or not.
You know, I don't think he was ever really conscious of it, but those stories that are told to him by an old man are interspersed often, and I got into writing those. You know, I thought those were just cool as hell.
Oh yeah, and I'm trying to figure out, which I love. I love multi-dimensions of time in a story, like layers that jump around. So in the main story, Telesphore, the old man, has been dead for some time, really.
Yeah, and Will's, at certain periods in the novel, he remembers. He remembers the time he first met this old man, because it was his only neighbor and his only... They weren't even friends. It was the only person he knew, and the old man told him stories. And
well, right. So there's 3 layers of time.
Will was a sponge for those, and I don't think he ever saw himself as like the keeper of these stories. But it was almost like, who's better to hear them than somebody from the outside? It's, you know, it's like when you're, you know, and I'm sure this is not politically correct, but when you're immersed in everything, sometimes it's harder, you know, to see the bigger picture. And, you know, and Will didn't have that closeness where, you know, these stories became like romantic adventure for him, and, you know, the spirituality of the culture, and, you know, the oddness and the weirdness, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, what I might call mysticism in the spiritual, religious, you know, the Santos.
Yeah.
And you know, I realize you've got this bird thing going on in the story. The old man that dies in the snowdrift in the prologue, hallucinating on birds. Yeah. Then all of a sudden I realized, then later you have Telesphore again telling us yet another story, where they're going and repairing the old church. In the attic, they find skeletons of birds and bodies of men.
Yeah.
And it's like this weird thing of birds. Yeah. Is that just totally out of your subconscious? These bird
well,
images?
You know, I mean, I was not tying anything together. But what's interesting, it wasn't until I wrote the 3rd novel. In the 3rd novel, I realized who the bones were of those men in the attic of the church.
Who were they?
Well,
they were the guys in your other part of the trilogy.
It had nothing to do with Perdido, but it was just a trip. It was like, I just threw these bones up there, and 2 novels later, it's like, holy shit, I know who these people are. But
this is where we're going to the bridge.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, it wasn't until I was nearly done with the book, you know, that I realized Will was holding a lot of the lore of this village in himself, and knew more. You know, there's one scene I remember where he's talking to Felipe, and he says, yeah, there was this black guy who lived here, and Felipe had never even heard the story. But Will had known something that had happened 60 years earlier in the village Felipe grew up in. And, you know, I mean, this is where, when you don't plot out a novel, stuff pops up. You it's cool to think of it later.
Well, I personally, I believe in the subconscious and writing more than the conscious. So I totally personally get it.
Yeah.
Even though you being a more disciplined writer probably despise people like me or who are basically punk musician versions of writers.
I don't think I despise anybody. So you're safe, Jeff.
So, let's see, where are we now?
You're coming to the bridge.
God.
But I haven't read the screenplay in a long time, and I should look at it again. But
anything pop up in your memory when you read it before that you said, "Fuck, Jeff missed this"?
No, I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought it was tight. My recollection is, and I think we had talked about this a little bit, was that I think the stories are voiced over in the screenplay.
Well, yeah.
Or something, and I remember somebody mentioning to me that I missed was how important it would be for, if this ever makes it to film, to make sure Will is seen hearing these stories.
Right.
Or as a parent, these stories are going to Will,
Well, that's what I was doing last night on the prologue.
Yeah.
I was finally working on the prologue.
Yeah, but I think...
And Will is sitting there listening.
Yeah.
Now, I have this...
Like in shadow with a cigarette.
Yeah, I have this thing where I know I'm going to have to take this out, but I have this thing where Will is scratching intermittent notes on a pad of paper when he's talking to Tellus 4, and I guess it's that fucking desire that I have to, I don't know, give some definition to what's the purpose of Will doing all of this, and basically what I realize is that this is Will's version of fucking TV.
Well, possibly. It just might be subtler. I get what the guy said about what's his motivation. Why wouldn't he just go fuck it?
Yeah.
But, this is the guy who listens to village secrets from this old man. He's the guy, he wants to, a story about, like, this bridge up here, a story of a girl hanging from this bridge in the middle of nowhere. That's not going to grab this guy's curiosity.
Right.
And... I think
we should park over here and walk.
I think it's more subtle than, his sister got lost and nobody found her, or, rather than, I guess you can always come up with a frickin' backstory if you need it, but maybe the best thing is just to go for, if you know Will really well, try to show it, in little ways, like this shot,
this is like,
you know what I mean, Joe?
Yeah.
And then maybe worry about the backstory later. You can always throw some stupid thing. Where's my sister? Which is just, it's like, people are pretty stupid, though.
Well,
it's like
this branches into the thing we talked about before, which is, can I borrow your lighter?
Yeah.
Your editor's kind of wanting you to turn it into a Tony Hillerman murder mystery because of the drama that sits as a tent pole. You can put it all the way down if you want. Because of the drama that sits as what I call a tent pole right in the center of the story, which is the retired town cop dying of cancer, blows his brains out of the gorge.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about, is my memory correct that they kind of wanted?
No, I think your memory's wrong.
Oh my God.
Actually, I'm sorry to cut in there. I've worked with the same editor on all 4 books, and his name's Fred Ramey, and the books have been published through a variety of different presses, but each one, he's been my editor, and I don't think we've ever seen it in the Hillerman context because he's this kind of a straight mystery writer, set in a certain culture, and they work. But I mean, all four of my books, none of them really follow that pattern, and there's crossover characters. But there's not one main character walking through each four books,
Yeah, the main character seems to be the village of Guadalupe.
Well, exactly. That would be the main character, and
let me clarify again. Perdido is the first of the four books.
The first one was the Journal of Antonio Montoya. That was published first, and it was the Journal. Then it was Perdido, and then the third book was A Santo and the Image of Cristobal Garcia, and the last one was kind of the Negro League baseball novel called Madewell Brown.
Right.
Madewell Brown is in Perdido, but he's kind of a walk-on character. He's another story Will hears, and then he walks off, and when this black guy walked off stage, part of me went with him, like, who was this guy? And that was kind of the beginning of Madewell Brown, trying to figure that out.
Well, I love the prologue. I mean, I really, in the last couple of days, re-immersed in the detail of it, trying to figure out how to script it, into a concise thing, kind of like the opening title sequence of the movie, which is like, not really. I mean, but to me, it's setting up at the beginning of Perdido. What Will is, because this Madewell Brown goes in and spends 7 years painting the history of his family that he sounds like he abandoned.
Yeah.
And basically did his 7-year art therapy of painting the fantasy of what all of his kids did.
Yeah.
And then
he walks away.
Walks off. Now, Will, to me, there's a profound love story between Will and Lisa that catches you at the end of the book in the last scene at the doorstep of the kitchen.
Yeah.
Which I consider a huge part of the story which kind of ties in with Madewell Brown's family children thing,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it was. Now, I don't know where Madewell Brown came from, but I mean, he's Will in a way,
Yeah, that's
came out of nowhere, and he stayed, unlike Will. I mean, I think Will sees the rest of his life in this place because he belongs, which is what sets him up for this downturn. Madewell Brown, for whatever reason, came there and stayed for a period of time and then left, and nobody knew who he was or where he was from. The guy who ran the little cafe knew a little bit.
Yeah, Felix.
Felix, right. And I guess it's a Will story. It's,
I mean, the layers of the prologue.
Yeah.
The nuance of the way you kind of parlay around as a writer, I think deftly, where you have these little like asides about Felix talking. First of all, it's Teller's foretelling Will about Felix's relationship with Madewell Brown, and then there's these little asides about how then you're in the mind of Felix going, he wondered why the fuck Madewell Brown would stop in the village of Guadalupe after seeing the idiot kid Gilfredo throwing rocks
at the cow.
At the cow. Right. And there's all these little subtle asides, dozens of them, that I'm sitting there as a screenwriter going, oh shit.
Well,
how do I layer this and move it? And yet it's a huge challenge to me.
Well, it's, I mean, I think, I like humor.
Yeah.
And some of these scenes are so bleak that, I just need a stupid kid throwing rocks at a cow every once in a while, because it's, in the midst of tragedies, all this stupid stuff going on. And it plays good for me, and it takes me out of it a little bit, it's not bleak, but I think at some point in time I realized, I guess my theme through each book is finding your place, and that seems to be it. And whether it's what's your place in a family. I mean, I write, there's so many families in these books, and every character is out of place in their own family, and Will's is, where's his place in this village? And it seems to be a recurrent theme that keeps popping up, of never feeling part of something, always feeling outside, just like any stupid family.
Well, and you have this multi-dimension to your personal family life, right?
Yeah.
You've got 2 generations of kids, essentially.
Well, I do have 2 generations of kids, but it goes even farther back. I can think of my own upbringing, and what you think your family is, and what it really turns into, and everything's like a frickin' mystery, even in your own stupid house. I watched with Eli, my 14-year-old, Little Miss Sunshine the other day, and when you meet all the characters, his first line was, "God, are they dysfunctional?" And I just thought, every stupid family is dysfunctional, no matter how they look or how bizarre the pieces are fit together. It's like, it's where am I? It's kind of that where am I question.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's go down to the bridge and find an angle and do a little repeat-oning of some of the stuff about the hung girl.